At actually on time at 5:30 with roll call.
Barry Docamber here.
Pat Sheehan here.
Bobby Hempling here.
Emily Dorn here.
Colin Harvey here. Okay, the next public comment section. Anybody wishing to address the RCDC either in person or online? Okay. Thank you. Oh, okay, we're saving paper. Excellent. Okay, next thing is discussion and possible action on the minutes from January 13th, 2025 RCDC meeting. Any discussion or is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, that takes us to the next one. Okay, we have been punting this for some level of quorum. President Bobby Hempling.
I will not run, and I will not seek, and I will not accept your nomination.
All right, we need to get this done, so we're gonna try it. We're gonna give it a shot here. So I think the easiest thing to do is go through and just get nominations for each position and then vote.
I nominate Colin Harvey for president.
I second that.
Anyone else for president? I nominate Emily Duran for vice president.
I second that.
Is there a second for that?
Second.
I second.
Nominate Pat Sheehan for secretary.
I second that.
Any other names? And I nominate Bobby Hempling for treasurer.
I second that.
I was hoping Pat Sheehan would step up for that.
I think he's exceeded the term limits for treasurer.
Yeah, I think so.
You gotta watch me.
I think so.
All right, with I guess everybody fine with their nominations. I don't think there's anything else. I don't think you vote on nothing.
Well, I think Barry hadn't had a role here in a couple terms.
I was
David
president.
hasn't had a role
That's enough.
here in a couple terms. But yeah,
All right. So is there anything else?
Do you not want to be treasurer?
I don't mind. All I
Okay,
gotta do
then
is
you can do that.
If you guys just take the vote on it,
Yeah.
that would be good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So, all right. So, all those in favor of these positions, nominations, or do we have to do it one by one?
No,
Just do the yeah.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Check that off. Sorry, that's the
Congrats,
strangest thing I've ever done. Okay, the next one is discussion on next steps for the Rollingwood Park tree planting project.
Yes, this is just an update. So after the recent city council meeting, I reached out to Moss Verde to get an updated proposal since the previous one that we had was very old. And so the quote that they gave us was actually much less than the original quote that they gave us. So the previous one was around 49, and I believe this one is around 43. So it's much cheaper. And we went ahead and approved it. And then the park commissioner is going to move forward with next steps, such as tree placement, and have those discussions. And they are open to any suggestions for tree placement. So if you guys are interested, feel free to tune in to any park commission discussions. But that's the update that I have for now.
And this is the project that was around the fields and the wall,
I think
right?
it's up and down.
This is the
where
tree project,
driveway.
This is
tree
the
and irrigation.
project. It was estimated at $50K, and we approved it.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
Yes,
And
that's
then-
right.
Okay.
And then it went back to finalize, which is what that is,
Got it.
and it got approved
Perfect.
at city council already as well.
Yes,
East
that's
side
right.
of the fields.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
That's right.
In between the blocks.
Awesome. Well, good.
Excellent. Thank you for
Great.
that. Okay.
Stuff happened.
Just real quick. Okay. The next piece was discussion and update on the RCDC Commercial Concepts Working Group. That was our agreed upon decision to get together a cross-functional group to start to work with getting more educated on some of the more recent development concepts, get some concepts on paper that people can react to and have discussion with the community. Emily and I have been doing that outreach. We already had confirmation from this group that it would be Barry, Emily, and myself. I have confirmation from Ryan Clinton. I have confirmation from from Kevin Glasheen, and and Alan will be joining us as well in his new role. We are open to add anybody else. I have one other outstanding that was recommended by Ryan that I've not heard back from yet,
Yeah.
but it's not that big of a deal either way. Does that make sense? And the next step will be in April for that group to work with a non-Chinatown developer for us to get a little bit more educated on some of the things that are being done in Austin that we might not think could work here. Any questions? No. Okay.
There we go.
Okay. Next one is discussion and possible action on initiatives and projects for RCDC funding that are eligible projects pursuant to chapters 501 and 505 of the Texas Local Government Code. The last item that was on our meeting minutes from the previous meeting was this discussion of us collecting potential projects for 2025 for us to vote on moving forward with the next step or not today. I have a collection. Some came from this group before we left. Some came from city council. Some came from just other folks in the community that I've talked to. And I think what we should do is work this group today and see what we want to move forward and not. And if it spurs new ideas and we want to add a few for discussion in the next meeting, we would do that. Does that sound okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. The first one relates. This is one that I put in. Is very specifically related to that conceptual design working group that I just mentioned. As soon as we have had some of these discussions to get better educated, we are going to have to work with somebody that can do some visual conceptual designs. So this is a recommendation to do some initial work for us to figure out who could do that type of work for us and what would that cost. That's would be the initial step of that project. No actual initial money requested, just making sure we can keep that working group and inputs and needs of that working group aligned.
So Colin, is this like RFP?
Yeah.
Like basically just send this out to like architectural firms and see what they would cost for like do this kind of a blank slate imagine, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think there's two elements to it. I think it's one, just trying to figure out who would really have the design creds for the type of stuff we want to do, and then two, folks that would be able to at least do sort of a maybe even an RFI at this state, sort of a rough order of magnitude, so we know what we're talking about. So those would be the two pieces.
And then, I mean, the only question I had about this one in particular was like with like the other owners of like the Rolling Wood Plaza, right? So, I mean, we're gonna do their visual design work for them, which I know that's part of our goal, but the group that actually physically owns Rolling Wood Plaza has financial ability to do this work. So, is it like just us leading them to water, or is, I mean, what is the kind of thought there?
That's a great question. I think, and that's another reason why I wanted to separate just going out and seeing how much it would cost before doing that. I think it's a very delicate balance for that conversation with them. They'd probably come in and do the whole thing soup to nuts, everything on their dime, if they thought they could get something done here, to be and so it is a little bit of leading horse to water that, hey, we've got this cross-functional group that's done some legwork and put forth a couple of concepts that we think the community would be okay with and that we think are in the ball. They have given us feedback on the types of things it would take to be profitable and for them to be of interest. The question is can we come up with something that's like that? We may find out that some of those costs are prohibitive and we want to say, hey, let's collaborate on this. But we've learned more and I think we're more on the same page. I think that's a decision we can still make in terms of who pays for what.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
I mean, it's basically just showing the
Put
community
some skin in the game.
like best like pie in the sky within our code requirements and like what is financially feasible. If you got approved, this is what it would look like. So then they can take it and like, well, we want to do this or this, mixed use or whatever. It doesn't matter. At least just giving them a little more of a push.
Yeah.
So, like,
And
makes
to get
sense.
an idea if just for instance if some and that's why I think the conversation that we'll have with this working group without them, but with a developer that's doing the kind of things that I think will work, we might get some ideas of like, hey, I had no idea you could do X, Y, Z. And, you know, is it prohibited, not prohibited? I don't know. But because everything has sort of been just a topic of discussion, it's really hard for things like this, they're that complex, without looking at it, I think.
And the only hesitation I have on that one is, so the owners of that group, if you look at the other properties they own, they don't really have a aspiring development really in their portfolio. It's a lot like what you see.
Nuts and bolts.
And so, I mean, there's some in Dripping Springs, there's some in Spicewood, other spots. And so, are we like actually, and then maybe it's the best case, right? We inflate it and we have this like really nice view of like what could be, and then maybe it makes someone else come in and, do something else. And that's quite honestly the only concern I have, is because I don't want to do some work for somebody that could quite honestly afford it, but also, if that's what needs to be done, it needs to be done. So I just wanted to put that out there as of kind of how we, nudge is fine, but
I think that's a fair concern. I think that my opinion, and that's how we'll vote on it, is the nudge is necessary, because if you look at what they have, they've got something that's cash flowing like crazy with 20 people behind it on the list to get in there.
correct.
And I think it's not gonna be a straightforward design. I don't think there's gonna be a thing with no exceptions.
Right.
And if we can't come up with anything that sort of lives in the middle that the community's okay with and they're okay with, then we might as well stop as early as possible with at least money
Go
spent.
do something else,
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of a fail fast, or hey,
Okay.
we've discovered something new that we can work on. You have
The
an
time
excellent.
value of money, right? Like, I mean, it matters then.
Right.
So.
That's right. You have an excellent point though too, is when I think with them as developers, that's probably a loose term considering the quality point that you're making.
Mhm.
They would play much more of a financial development role than I think they would play a design role. And I think that is what, and I keep forgetting the name of what is the place we visited? The Lauren. So the Lauren's way too big for anything that we're contemplating, but very much in line with probably the quality and aesthetic that we would be okay with. They played a middle role in that, and that they picked it up in the middle of what almost was a bankruptcy during COVID. And so they played a development financial to finish role. I think they, as well as any of their peers, would say they wouldn't be the design firm behind what really we would expect. So I think that's a good subtle point as well.
Yeah, I mean, status quo is obviously not working, so I mean,
Right.
I support this. I was just wanting to understand a little bit more.
No, I think they're all good questions, and I think for every point that we ought to keep an eye on, I believe we've got the ability to put the brakes on before we spend any money all along the way.
Just
Okay. Do I have a motion in favor?
Motion in favor?
Second?
second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No opposed. Okay. Thanks for that feedback. I've got both of those key recommendations on design payment checkpoints. Okay. All right. The next one is, and again, just to reiterate, when we talked about expanding the impact that we can have based on the mandate of an EDC, we talked about very direct things like what we just spoke about, but we also said the other two categories were security and beautification. Those two things can't help but be reinforcing to a good commercial development corridor. So this next one, council has been exploring some of what Westlake Hills has done as it relates to security cameras, and potentially investing in those.
These are license plate readers.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes. I understand that to be still under investigation, but promising. And this is just to gauge this group's support, for potentially funding that if that comes our way.
I would be in support of that.
I'm in favor.
In favor? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Thank you. Okay. This next one is a little bit more complicated, but came to my attention through a conversation I had recently, and we're going to need a little legal help on this one. So it relates to security as well. And at the end of one of our meetings, we had a discussion just in general that said, hey, you know, sometimes it's possible for EDCs or communities to partner with one another. The feedback that I was getting is that whole area that's kind of behind Vale, you know, I forget what it's called, Silver Preserve.
Yeah.
The encampment area.
Yes,
Yes.
yeah, and that was how it was brought to me, as the encampment area.
Yeah.
So City of Austin's too stretched to cover that is part of the problem. There are definite security concerns that some of what's happening in the community that we're hearing about related to break-ins, related to people just wandering into people's backyards, are people coming through or I guess going for a walk from the encampment into our neighborhood. And so I wanted to see what is usually done to reach out to in Austin and say, is there something we can do together to not leave this completely unmonitored, and maybe, you know, bring down the risk that's associated with it.
Is the concept that we would pay for more police patrols in the area? What are we looking at?
I literally don't think I know right now. I think it could be surveillance, security cameras, could be a combination of you know, patrolling. I think it could be anything. I think the first question is, like, one, how do you collaborate with Austin to do that, which is going to be upcoming here in just a second. And then the other is once we figure that out, we're like, all right, what is Austin doing?
Yeah.
You know, because it's their land.
Not much.
I think we know the answer to be zero, but we should probably ask, and then figure out brainstorm a little bit of is there any way we could collaborate that wouldn't be prohibitive?
You know, we have, as I understand it, some kind of a collaboration agreement about policing on the stretch of Rollingwood Drive down, which I guess is Barton Springs Road, below our sign there to the intersection. And so sometimes when there's a fender bender out on the intersection, I see our police officers there, and sometimes it's Austin police officers. My understanding is that the city of Rollingwood ends at the backyard of the people on Vale. And so that street, whatever its name is,
Alfonso something.
Yes,
is
Alfonso,
within the
yeah.
city of Austin's jurisdiction.
Yeah.
That's correct.
And so probably it would be, an answer would be like what we already have on the adjacent street there. But the real issue, it seems to me, is what do we put money to do? And
Okay.
Fence. Well, I mean, we have to follow Austin's like rules and regulations for how they deal with mental illness, encampments, et cetera. So like, even though we have reciprocity with them, we can't you can't go in and excavate or move things out or move things around. So you're still like hamstrung by whatever the other city's policy is.
well, is it only the street that we're worried about and keeping people from crossing the street, or is it the whole issue of the encampment?
No, well, I mean, there's
I
just
think
it's kind of an unpatrolled
Take
area.
it-
You've been there, right? Like it's unpatrolled. I mean, there's
Well, no, I don't go back there.
I mean, so you run into yes, we could. I mean, my thought is, you go ahead, Pat. Sorry.
What about with the license plate reader proposal? I'm sure they could put cameras 3 or 4 places along there on our property line facing out into there that would feed into the police station.
Yeah, I mean
That to me would be the simplest,
yeah.
But what do you do with that?
Right.
Well, the police have a chance to monitor it. You also can set it where it alarms. If anybody comes across it from midnight to 7 a.m.,
Yeah.
you want a policeman, there's an alarm for the cops to go.
But I think to respond, though, we'd probably have to have some kind of reciprocity agreement about using their streets, using
No,
the
we're
Austin
gonna put it on
street.
our property. Put the cameras in our property facing out.
But
That's
it
awesome.
would literally, but I think also Austin ends on that road, right? So I mean,
Yeah,
it's
or the
part of the
backyard.
idea. It's just a matter of how do you nuance that with okay, so
There's probably 4 or
a
5
dialogue,
ways
right?
to do it. I think I'm well, actually not even me. I think the idea I'm just representing is that we explore not doing nothing.
Could we say this is, why don't we ask the police what they think is the best response?
Yeah.
And then we say, hey, we're interested in
Yeah.
funding whatever solutions that you
They come
come
up
up with.
with,
Yeah.
And you, and you,
I mean, I've always wanted to be a cop, so I can come up with a lot
You
of
can come up with a lot?
reasons.
Okay,
Yeah,
good.
but
do you mean Rollingwood or Austin or
all of
both?
it. Yeah,
Right.
I don't think
well,
we're gonna get anywhere with the city
Yeah.
costs, especially on the
No, but I think you have to
But-
check the box of
Okay.
having that
I'm
conversation.
not at all opposed to looking at, to see what we can do. I am opposed to trying to take on the city of Austin's homeless problem.
Right.
That's 22 or
Sure.
2,500 people, and God only knows how much expense, and we don't have the money to do that, nor the authority. But
Yeah.
to work on a cooperative agreement about use of streets, to do some cameras, fine.
And I think that-
But I think our police department is already pretty stretched. I think we're not at full not at full employment of our number of police officers that we need to deal with what we have today. And so maybe what we do is fund an additional police officer.
Or help, yeah.
So they are funded.
That
The
would be
allocation
something.
is there.
They can't, yeah.
The thing, so I've been trying to go through this a good bit. So the allocation is there, the funding isn't there. The only question I had is there other things we can do from like signing bonuses, increased salaries, where we take away, because there's a good bit of capital in the city budget, which we can fund if it justifies under the, these two 501 and 505s. If we could free up some capital cash from the city budget that would reallocate to an operational budget of allowing the city to pay more for police officers or any of those other like incentives, medical, increased medical things like
Yeah, I'm
anything
just
that frees up the cash.
Retention bonus.
Service
All
re-
that's
yeah,
good,
re-
but I'm just
reallocation.
concerned about the number of officers.
Well,
Is this a possible legal expenditure for us?
Yes, that's an excellent question. Stan Springerly, legal counsel to the EDC. The funding has to be for an approved project. If it's coming from the EDC, the key language I see is in chapter 505.152, improvements that enhance. So, I mean, something like security cameras there's a lot of clarity, right? Because it's equipment, it's improvements that enhance. When it comes to the concept of funding bonuses or salaries,
that's what I'm saying we would do. But there's things in the budget that we could go the other way with, where we could fund and enhance, and that frees up.
right, okay, I see what you're
Fixed.
saying. Right.
You're gonna play a shell game with accounting?
Yes, I am.
Where did you learn that?
Because you
A
don't
lot of
want to get
places.
into the business of
Salaries
usurping the city council's authority
Right.
over its budget making policy over salaries. You can't interfere with
Sure.
that
I'm not saying that
and
what their salary
supplement
should
it
be.
or affect future funding years. But if you give them some help in one
Correct.
regard, it could open it up where they can make a policy decision to give them more options.
Like if
So,
we bought
yes,
their
if you're in-
vehicles.
Any improvements like security cameras, even if it's the license plate
Yeah.
readers or any other security related enhancements
Okay.
that would improve
falls
would
under the
fall within the project.
And I think that we would get a lot of thumbs up from the community,
Yeah.
all over the
Right.
community for doing those kind of projects. You know, there, some projects that we've proposed in the past have, kind of, there's been some thumbs up, some thumbs down. This one, there will always be some thumbs down, but
Sure.
this is one of those that I think most people would get behind.
I mean, in the city budget, there's like $187,000 of capital that's literally line item capital that I think qualifies for RTC. I'm not obviously an attorney, but going through the budget, it looked like things that we could provide and fund, which would free up $187,000 for the city to use for other things. So we do the same thing with the staff. I mean, we pay the staff,
Right.
part of their budget for our work. So
Right.
Thank you.
there's
Mm-hmm.
yes. So I don't see why that's not an option. I mean, I don't know if it's an amendment or whatever, but there is a way to make this work.
Yeah, so maybe to your comments and both of yours, maybe the next best step though is that conversation with Rollingwood Police Department on what they think, because like Pat, like you were saying, if those cameras live on our side but happen to reflect, be monitoring what's over there. I mean, we can get down to if that's a problem or not. I don't know, but you could probably do quite a bit if even if like motion detecting light, things like that.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
Yeah.
people start. I mean, you can't build a wall, but if you start having somebody that's coming in, there, that's
Oh, you
somebody's
can.
attention that
Yeah.
somebody knows you're there.
Can build a wall.
But so that's really where that's where I was going with. Is like, what can we let's look at it.
Well, lighting, it's lighting,
And what can we
security
find?
lighting along the street.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
so it sounds like there's not action. excuse me, on this yet. It's more of
Yes.
questions with our Rollingwood Police Department on possibilities of what they think solves the solution solving
Yeah.
here, and then Austin Police on the agreement.
And then what can we offset in the current
And-
budget or
right.
future budget legally to free up maybe some creative ways for the city of Rollingwood to fund or increase the attractiveness of our police department?
Yeah.
Okay, so why don't we start with just, as opposed to putting this forward as a formal motion yet, why don't we, unless someone has objection, let's go forward with the first two easiest things to do, which are to talk to Rollingwood Police and to also connect with council related to the capital improvements budget line, to see if there are other things in there that fall into this category of what's acceptable, as you just kind of gave us examples on, and then we'll reframe from there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if I could just quickly, if
Oh,
you
yes,
do
please
some
do.
due diligence and you get some proposals where you get the concept of maybe cost sharing, either with the city, the EDC, and the city of Austin, I know that seems like a stretch, but if, for example, if there's a security task force or some kind of security plan, and you could draw up a proposed interlocal agreement between governmental entities, send it over to the police departments, and have them propose it, and maybe you could get some cost sharing, depending on what kind of feedback you get on what could be done.
That
in
sounds
this.
like 2 years.
Yeah.
I'm just saying,
Yeah, no,
Keep
but
that option open.
all we, I had kind of prepped stand for is in
Yeah.
all fairness, was, as it related to
Yeah.
just the concept of interlocal agreements.
Yeah.
I don't think any of us is particularly, with the, the exception of the example Brian gave, well versed in it. So I just wanted to be able to, if you came right off the bat and go, I've seen 3 things like it, but I think we've all agreed there's 2 easy steps to take before we take that
Yeah.
2-year step.
Yeah.
and I've seen one in particular, just from my past experience with regard to license plate readers. Those are of high interest to police departments. And I've seen, for example, in Williamson County, the Brushy Creek community interlocal with the sheriff's office, because it's an unincorporated area. So they wanted that in their community, so they paid for it, and then the sheriff's department was highly interested in utilizing. And there's a bunch of protections on the use of it constitutionally.
Yeah, well, if that's equipment, we can do that directly and we can do it quickly. We don't have to wait for a budget item. For the
Right.
other things that
Yeah.
we're talking about, the enhancement of the ability to cover what we learn is happening
Right.
there, we're gonna have to get with the city and go over their line items and figure out what we can take on to free up some of their capital. That's what you're suggesting, Barry.
Yeah.
And that may happen later when, because the city will be adopting a budget before too long here.
Right.
Maybe we can do it quicker, maybe we have to wait for their budget adoption, I don't know. But the cameras, and the readers, we could do quickly.
Yeah. No, I think so.
We just have to pitch it over the fence to the city
Do we have
council.
any idea how much of the activity is from vagrants walking up versus,
Driving a stolen car.
the driving?
That's why I think you need a
probably
I think you probably need a combination as it relates to that particular problem of the ability to monitor the street from a license plate standpoint and the ability to monitor motion from somebody wandering.
Just to expedite this, would we have the chief come here next week to talk, or next month to talk through this, or would we do something where we reach out earlier? What is the best way to handle that?
Probably both is if something would somebody be up for having that conversation so that
Yeah.
then Chief Munoz can come talk to us and get us all educated?
I'll go talk to him.
Okay. All right. I think that's a great idea.
Her.
Not him.
Yes. That's what I meant.
That's what I meant.
I wanna know.
Let's see.
Okay. All right. Another one that has come up is developing a potential plan for the uses and design improvements to the concession stand building. I think we may have I don't know this for sure yet. I think we may have somebody that is willing to do some of the initial design concepts. I'm not gonna commit to that, for us. But I think this relates to, there's been some chatter on, should we try to make the concession stand operable again? Is that even the best use of it? Could it be used differently and better?
Isn't that to the baseball people have the lease on it? I mean, that's up to them to run it, manage it, and make it work. Not
And
us.
and they're not doing it, and haven't done it for several
I know,
years.
a long time ago, we used
I mean,
to.
that building is now the bathrooms, which are a big public benefit.
Agreed.
Right.
And I don't know if I don't think we're carrying that cost, by the way, but I don't know if we could, but maybe,
Well,
whatever,
imagine
but,
if we're not.
and then the rest of the building is basically storage.
yeah.
I mean, there are facilities in there, sinks and plug-ins for refrigerators and plug-ins for grills or whatever to run a concession stand. But the Little League hasn't either been able to or willing to, and I don't know what.
I don't think we should spend any money on it. The Little League's not gonna do anything with it.
I'm happy to donate a refrigerator and a griddle as soon as May 15th. So
Wait, what'd you say?
I have an extra refrigerator and a griddle that
Oh.
I need to donate to someone when I move. I'm just trying to say I'm happy to donate that if they need it. I can have another one.
They have to.
Is
Just to
Little
move
League-
along.
Is that a Little League plan to
No, I-
try that, or
I
you're
was-
just
Brian,
suggesting
I was
it could be
half
done?
joking, actually. I would like to give it to somebody, but if they need it, that's the problem. Happy to donate it.
I can get clarification on who owns the concession stand.
Yeah.
It's my understanding that the city essentially
We own it.
can run it, and like we can, we own it. So I can get some more information about that and give you guys some follow up, possibly tomorrow, sometime later this week.
That would be good. I think, and I probably narrowed in moving too fast. Like the discussion I had with the two individuals that were, as I was just soliciting beautification and things that we really want to try and make a difference on. They were, to your point, talking about, is there anything we should be doing with the bathrooms? Is there anything we should be doing with the concession stand, whether fixing it, repurposing it, whatever the case may be? I don't know.
Is the goal that it's usable 365 days out of the year, or is it just when it's baseball? Or was that brought up?
That was not brought
Okay.
up.
Okay.
It was just, could it be a better use?
Got it.
Yeah, there was a
Certainly
lot
not
of
the bathrooms.
chatter
We did the bath-
Yeah.
I think the bathrooms was just because to your
Yes.
point, Brian, we use those bathrooms for like
All the time.
everything.
Oh, yeah, those bathrooms are very valuable to every park user.
Right.
The
Yeah.
problem I have with coming up with a concept of what they need, I mean, they need the storage that they are using. They're either there or somewhere else. Mostly, I think, in the Rollingwood area, although most of the kids that play there are really from Westlake. Are we talking about enlarging the building as a possibility, or is this just, you want to have somebody look it over the situation, talk to the Little League, and come with a proposal? Is that,
More of that. I think that's the ask. Is there a potential? And maybe it's limited to the bathrooms.
Yeah.
Maybe it's, if no one's ever going to run a concession stand, maybe the concession stand space should be repurposed. Not necessarily, I have no idea.
It is probably the only baseball fields in America that don't have a concession stand. Just
but what they don't have is a group of parents willing to run the thing, because on almost all of the concession stands
I
at
think
Little
they
League
might, if
parks,
it's
it's
offered.
parents
we
who
don't
run
know
it.
that.
I think if it's offered.
We don't know that at
Yeah.
all. I mean, there's all kinds of chatter. The building's not capable of being a
Yeah.
concession stand now. That nobody really knows. I think that those families and parents, again, I'm just saying from the
Well,
chatter.
I
is they
coached
would
4
like to-
kids for 15 years up there, and we didn't have a concession stand because we couldn't get parents to do it. And I was on the board of the Little League, and I know what was going on. I've had 2 grandchildren in Seguin who do have a concession stand, and it's because I've been active with their Little League, and it's because they do get parents to join it. So you're saying we don't know, but my own personal experience is that it's the parents' willingness to fund, not to fund, but to run,
Yeah.
put in the hours to do it. Now, we can hire people to do that. And but if that's what we want to do, if we want to operate a concession stand,
We don't.
All right, so I think this one also falls into a similar category of the one above.
More
which-
exploring.
More exploring. We need Michaela, your input on what's even possible as it relates to the lease versus the city. and that would be super helpful. Thank you.
Who's the head of the Little League now? It was Chad Smith a couple of years ago, and he was also the head of the Parks Department, and my knowledge of the concession stand is from walking around it, and he has all the keys, and we
Yeah.
walked through the entire facility, and I got to see what was going on inside it a couple of years ago, but I haven't been in there since.
I believe it's Colby Lewis.
Who?
That's at least Colby Lewis. That's at least who I talked to for the.
Is he a
Baseball.
Rollingwood resident, or is he a Westlake person?
I don't know. His name doesn't sound familiar for Rollingwood. I can't speak
Yeah,
for Wesley.
Chad grew up playing Little League on those fields,
Yeah.
so he was innately involved in it and had an investment in the idea.
Chad's still the attorney, I think he's just the attorney for that, for Western.
Well, if we want to explore this, that's fine. I'm for it, and hiring some expertise to look at it and talk to them and talk to about what they need and want and can do that's all fine.
Okay. Well, you took the police department. I'm happy to, or Barry, one of us, anybody want to take? I'm happy to do it, to just go figure that out once I get the information on what we're allowed
I'll do
to
that one too.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Molly.
I'm not touching concessions in that park, so.
I'm gonna get a milk and cookies in there.
I think
Yeah.
that's a good idea. That's a good idea.
Well, we're gonna get.
Just kidding, if anybody thinks that.
We're gonna get close to that third rail in the next one, so just buckle
Yep.
up.
I saw it.
All right. So, another recommendation for the use of RCDC funds is to develop options to improve the back ball fields, including enabling a multi-sport usage, improving the parking lot between the ball fields and the pool or the WAC, and developing a dedicated off-leash dog area. The requested action is to take this idea to the Parks Board for potential action and project definition, with funding support from RCDC pending what comes out of that. I'm open for discussion and or anyone who is in favor of doing that, if there is no discussion, or not.
Well, I mean, I guess my first question would be can you explain this a little bit more? It's like worded very vaguely, so the intent of number 5.
And so just so everybody knows, I'm summarizing
Yeah, that's fine.
multiple pieces
Yes.
of input
That's okay.
and trying not to write a narrative.
Nope, I'm just trying to understand multi-sport and then improvement of back ball fields and a dog league. It's
Okay.
a lot of things, so
Okay,
just breaking it down.
so here's if I were to distill multiple pieces of feedback that I've got into what this was saying, is a lot of people feel that it's obvious, the back ball fields, the grass and everything do not look like the front two ball fields. They're just not in the same kind of shape. So the request was, why can't we get those in the same kind of shape? So that was one. The other is, if those are in that kind of a shape, is that the only thing we could be using them for when the kids aren't playing baseball? That was the question. I don't know.
That's not a multi-sport. I was actually just confused by it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It was
other
like if you had all this space and
Lacrosse
the
play
grass looked like the grass on the front two fields, then would we be able to play soccer out there? Would we be able to do other flag football? Anything that didn't violate, of course, the lease with the Little League.
Yeah.
So that was request number 2. The parking lot was very straightforward and mentioned several times. I think everybody agrees that parking lot, how far we go with it is one thing, but that parking lot's a mess.
Can I ask a question about the parking lot? So everyone parks pretty much near my house and down the whole street.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do we have to have a parking lot down there on that back part for baseball fields? Like, is it used enough, or can that space actually just be more utilized?
I think that's an interesting question.
I think it's probably not utilized because it's in such bad condition
Yeah.
that a lot of cars won't drive back there, but.
I mean,
I'm with you.
it's not that bad. I mean, if you have a vehicle, you can drive back there.
Yeah.
But like,
They drive
my
back.
point is, I mean,
Bill drives back there every day.
I don't know if there's like an AD issue or something like that, but I mean, that's still like more space, and I don't know if we actually even need to have a parking lot back there.
I think it's an interesting question too, because we were sort of a separate item, but they're bringing back the Rollingwood 5K this
Yeah.
year in the end of March, and we were having a lot of conversations about that because so many people park on the street, but then we were also figuring out how the course was going to block certain parking,
Right.
and there were sort of mixed feelings about, or not mixed feelings, mixed perceptions as to how that's used. I actually haven't paid that much attention to it. I've used it occasionally, but
The only The only addition I would have to that from my prior experience with working with the Little League for a number of years is that the emergency services people need to have access back there in case
Do we get-
some grandfather or something had a heart attack and they needed to get a wagon back there.
Can't we
So
just have
need to-
wider gates and shoot them all the way through the park?
Pardon?
Put wide gates all the way through, and they could shoot all the way back.
And go through other games.
Well, if someone's dying, I mean, does it really matter?
Well,
Well, I think it'd be safe to say
the basic concept would be though, Barry, when
Yeah.
we've got a street over there and
Yeah.
we've got a parking area, we just went, as we
Yeah.
we improve that parking area, one element that needs to be considered is being able to get
Yeah.
safety vehicle back
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
Yeah,
And that's why I was asking, like, basically the same vein. It's like, is it ADA issue? Is it
Yeah.
a fire issue? You know, something like that.
It's
Safety.
it's the Emergency Services District
Use it as a
issue is
term.
who raised it, you know, our, who provide our fire and our EMS here.
They run helicopters on that thing all the time.
Well, so I think inherent in the
Yeah.
broad, like I said, I tried to take several different comments and make it
Yeah.
inclusive, for lack of a better term, and develop options for these 3 listed areas. Probably could be inclusive of, you know, is fixing the parking lot, hey, that shouldn't even be a parking lot? I mean, that seems
Yeah.
like a reasonable question. And that could be a potential option.
when the ball fields are in use, you don't have enough parking. Otherwise,
Mm-hmm.
more parking goes out in the neighborhoods.
In
You
your
can only
area.
fit 8 cars back there.
Yeah.
No, you could,
Oh, no,
no, I'm
there's
talking about
not
along
that.
that road, you've got,
Oh, yeah.
you got,
I'm not talking about the
15
road. I'm
cars.
actually talking the little, you know, the little part where the big pillars are.
yeah, but
Yeah.
you're talking about that little half moon
little
area.
square, yeah.
Yeah, but that's,
That's all I'm
It's a
talking about.
giant L, you probably fit 25, 30 cars back there.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so, I mean, that whole area is used for parking when there's
Well, there's-
games going on,
Yeah.
Right.
and you're gonna,
Yeah, sorry, I was just talking about the little black box in the back, not the full road coming up and down.
yeah, okay.
Okay, well then, again, I think that
Yeah.
falls under options.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it might make sense to, it might be cost prohibitive to do that whole thing and not even worth it, and you make the rest of it grass or something else. And the last one, which is the one that people have different opinions, was that we fund a dedicated off-leash dog park. So, the only ask at this point is that we take this to Parks, which is who would do the groundwork related to all of these things, which are parks related. But they don't have funding with an eye for them to come back to us and
When do they meet?
discuss funding.
On the first Tuesday at 12 p.m.
I can
I'm
talk.
sorry, second Tuesday.
I can talk to them.
So is that tomorrow then?
Yes.
Yeah.
Or, I'm sorry. Well, this month they're meeting later in the month.
This is spring break.
I believe they are meeting on the 25th. So this month they're meeting on the 25th at 12 p.m.
I mean, I can go and liaison at 12 on the 25th.
Okay, thanks, Barry.
I just need some clarification more. We'll have to talk about
Yeah.
exactly what 5 means.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, and then I can reach back out if I need to, if you and I can't get it to a definition that works.
I'm sure we can work through it.
All right, so I think on this, we ought to decide that whether this group is in favor of taking that step and going and talking to Parks. Do I have a motion in favor?
I would make a motion that we have a liaison from the RCDC to go talk to the Parks Department about future improvements.
Parks Commission,
What did I say?
Parks, you said department.
Yeah.
Sorry, Parks Commission to create a dog park and improve the backfields.
It's not exactly how this is worded.
Yeah,
Well, I'm making
Right.
my own motion.
Okay. I think we should first have the dialogue, honestly. Like, we should just have a liaison to go and talk to them.
See what
once
they
they get
think.
clarification on this, and then work through what that looks like
Yeah.
before we propose, like, what the actual
yeah.
A, B, and C of coming out of this are. I don't think we're at this point where we can do that yet. That's my personal opinion. I know you're making a motion for it, but
Well, let me ask this question real quick. I'm not sure if I feel like we don't have a full understanding of exactly how we might do it, but I mean, like, what I got from people was pretty straightforward. Fix the parking lot, fix the ball fields, create an off-leash dog park.
Okay. I mean, if that's,
So,
if that's what
so
number
we,
5 is.
we're either
really
up, we're either
fine.
up for opening that dialogue and trying to move that ball forward, or not.
Yeah, and
Yes.
so again, yes, that solves our conversation. I was trying to get clarification on what 5 meant.
Okay.
So if that's what it is, sure, I second. Well, you're not done with your motion, I cut you off, but.
No, I'm done.
All right,
All
well
right.
then I would,
Do we have a second?
yeah, I'll second it.
Those in favor?
Aye.
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 Those against?
No,
Denoted. Okay, the motion passes. Cool. We got one more. Okay, the next one, this one came a little bit out of when Brooke and Tom, shared, just kind of some of the places we feel like we can do things. I've also had some conversations with Gavin as well. As a result of a couple of things. One, and this involves both some of the land along BKs between the buffer that some citizens own and that some don't. But 2 years ago, we had such a massive summer that we've had to trim a ton of trees out of there from a fire hazard perspective. And then you move down a little bit further, which, full disclosure, scoots down in front of my house. Same problem, plus the construction project for the water deal has just crushed a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
So what used to be, a green buffer between, a row of, 15 houses on South Crest, plus I forget what it's called, I guess the other side, you can pretty much just look at the Shell station, look at BKs. And so what I was talking to Gavin about specifically is I said, how long is stuff going to be going on beyond there? Because you want to be careful not to waste money. He said, well, right after this, we're going to be staging some stuff for city council and things like that. He said, but what you could do is, as long as you kind of stay within the Ames Creek belt, he's like, we're not touching any of that. You could probably make a lot of progress on replacing the dead wood and dead trees and stuff like that, so that when we start to finish all these projects and hopefully get some more commercial development done, our problem isn't that 20 citizens don't want anything new built because I'm looking right at it. So the idea, I'd like to scratch this 5K. I don't know where it was just like I did this at different times.
Those are tiny trees.
No, anyway, I think what I want to put here is just someone to develop a project on what are all the different places. There's also some potential spots on Delano Lane that could be improved in terms of whether you're looking at a parking garage or not, that people have talked about. Basically developing a project to go scope what are the different areas and see if we,
Palisades.
yep, and see if we can get just a rough order or magnitude of what some of our options would be. So it'd be a high level project to do that, to then, once we have the scope of all the different areas, we can prioritize them and then start to get cost estimates. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay.
And that's all on city property or easement areas or in the creek green belt or?
Yeah.
I'm just concerned that we have to limit ourselves to what's in the city.
Yeah, no, you're right, Brian. Even the piece, and this is what I was trying to understand from Gavin, my understanding is even the piece when you go, I guess, like as soon as you start to where that Paz veterinarian is and start moving along, that is, it's private land right up to the easement of the creek itself. And so we can bolster, greenery and things like that in through that easement without separate permission. So that was what I understood from Gavin. There's a little bit of some stuff on the other side of the creek on the south side where they're doing some of the construction that we need to be careful of a few things, or maybe a gas line there or something that, but anyway, I think
This would essentially be tree planting. I mean,
trees, shrubs,
Trees and shrubbery.
anything that makes it look.
anything that can deal with Texas heat and little maintenance
Yeah.
and create and just bolster the buffer for the community, so that
And then we would need to fund, I mean, this is like maybe a year or two down the road, but someone's gonna have to fund the maintenance of those trees too, right? Like, I mean.
yeah, so that would, yeah, so what we would have to, ideally it would fit similar to, what they're doing right now with that little bit that's been put to
Collect tests.
sort of deflect and cover the construction that's going
Yeah,
on.
you still have to put like, then when it gets cold, or, and then they're gonna have to water them
Yeah,
and things
yeah.
like that. I mean,
We
there's
need to,
still
we need to,
stuff-
we
you
need
can't,
to,
like,
we
leave
need
a
to
tree
figure that out, but
and start
I
dying.
think we need to figure out what it would cost to
Yeah.
implement first and then figure
Yeah.
out what it would take for operations cost impact. But I think right now it's simply scope all of the areas that we can be impactful with and get a rough order of magnitude of what does it take to do something like this, and then come back to this group.
Who's gonna scope it?
Yeah, I know, that was my question. Like, what were we-
I'm happy to try and lead that up and find, whoever I need to figure that out and just ask a bunch of questions.
Who was the group, sorry, that we talked about earlier that did a proposal for tree planting?
That was Mossberry Landscape Restoration,
Got it.
MAAS.
I'm assuming they're like an approved city vendor, or do we have that?
I mean, we've worked with them before, we don't have a approved list, but we have worked with them before.
Approved arborist.
Okay. All right. Do we have a motion to move forward with the development of a plan for this?
Yeah, motion to move forward with item number 6, create a project for develop a plan to improve the green space buffer between residential and community spaces with an initial budget undetermined, to produce conceptual designs, additional cost and space.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. Motion passes. Thank you. I think the last thing is our RCDC financials through January 2025.
We had $27,000 of sales tax revenue and interest. We're sitting at a budget, or at a $728,000 in the bank now. I don't know if we need to start looking at, what's the,
Of moving more into that.
yes, I mean, we've got a lot of cash.
Text pool.
Tax pool,
Text pool,
yes.
yes.
So that's probably something we need to start considering.
Is there any reason why we don't keep everything but like $150,000 in it?
I don't know the answer to that.
Our new city administrator, Mike.
I know, yeah. Alan?
So I had spoken briefly earlier with the finance director, and he had mentioned that the balance was getting to the point where he would recommend moving more into tax pool,
Okay,
given that there weren't any financial project or financial burden projects on the books coming up.
okay. Well, I make a motion to move 500,000.
How liquid is that?
We don't have 500, we,
I thought
344.
you said,
How
Seven.
liquid is the
It's the
text
amount
pool?
that's not in there.
oh,
No, no.
Usually, we're
It
just
depends on the
talking about
investment, but
I'm sorry.
it's quite liquid.
Okay. I don't.
So I
I
think at the
take
moment the
back
bank
my
I said it's like 1 or 2 basis points, which
that's what I thought you said.
Oh, we had 358 already texted, my sorry. Yeah, so the 344 here.
So move 150 or 200.
Yeah.
Yeah, 150. So I would,
Someone said 7 something.
Huh?
Someone said 7.
I said 700,
Yeah.
but that's the total.
That's the total.
Got it. Got it.
yeah.
The 358 that we
So
have.
moving another 150,000 over
Yeah.
would make sense. Yeah.
All right. Anything else, anyone?
No.
All right. Motion to close.
I'd move. We adjourn.
Second.
All right. Meeting is adjourned at 6:25.